welcome to another episode of Talking Insights. With this episode, we have Paul Neto. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Oh, excellent. It's not freezing too much in Toronto area.
No, our winters are mild, so it's not so bad.
That's okay. That's all right. Paul, you're an experienced market researcher. But for those that don't know, that haven't met you, haven't had the pleasure, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I started in market research through tech in the early days of market research before survey engines even really existed. I went to a little startup, and we primarily built our tech. We ended up getting acquired by the ComScore, and that led set off a series of experiences in different companies around data collection, behavioral data. I've been a founder of two companies now. One was funded out of Silicon Valley. It was the early days of using machine learning for research and understanding ad targeting, and the latest is here with Measure Protocol. I've also had a couple stints at Kantar and and a few others as well. So been on every aspect of the industry: buyer, seller, technology, you name it.
Becoming a serial entrepreneur. We'll be seeing
Ryan,
more of you.
yeah.
So now you're a Measure Protocol. Can you now tell us what it is? What's Measure's focus?
Yeah, so we're a consumer intelligence data company, and we work with brands and agencies. We primarily provide behavioral data, and it's really to help build confidence, give them ammunition for their data-driven decision making. So our primary focus is around holistic digital behavior. So we have a community of individuals that have our MSR app, and they regularly complete various behavioral data tasks. And in turn, we provide them with rewards. And so this can be stuff like Amazon purchase history, it could be what they watch on Netflix, what apps they use. But the result is what we believe is like the cleanest, most robust, probably complete behavioral data set. Because really, at the core of what we do, the atomic unit is the individual. So we collect data around all the various digital, touch points of an individual's. So we can understand not only what do they do on, say, TikTok, searches they do on like YouTube, what purchases they make, and it's really about that holistic picture of an individual. And this is primarily done with our patented technology called Retro. And a lot of the history is around, transparency, understanding individuals, rights for privacy and fair compensation. At the very end, people who participate in research and data collection, they just want a good experience. So those things are very kind of core to what we do, and it ends up being part of the magic in the mix of being able to do interesting things and having individuals have a good experience and get compensated properly.
That sounds very fair. And actually, I mean, as you know, Esomar, it's something one of our core principles, really. So with that, like you're speaking quite holistically about the individual, but if we zoom out even more, how would you say the consumer data landscape has been evolving? So in regards to like what role does the first party, zero party, and like permission data play in understanding consumer behavior? So what would you say on that?
Yeah, look, we're definitely moving towards an era where data is all permissioned. The level of transparency and permission and privacy is going to be very different than it has been in the past. And, we've been hearing about things like zero party for a few years now, but there are some critical things that are happening and they're changing the industry. One is you have players like Apple who are making big bets on privacy. So metering on iOS is effectively dead. It's effectively gone. And so it really creates a challenge. There's a black hole around data that's iOS based. Now, to be transparent, that's probably one of our strengths is around iOS data and a lot of our activities around that. You also see Google and others deprecating the cookie. There's this, death of the cookie and what's it going to do for, many, many industries. And we see legislation that's giving power back to consumers with these, new, privacy laws. Look, and for years we have been ticking off consumers with, poor experiences, to the point that, you often hear about trust in the industry and the challenges around that and the efforts that we do. So this new world is really about data collection that is permissioned, and these new rules of transparency and trust are required. Because in general, individuals are happy to share data, but they just need to have some sense of trust, and they just want to know, what are you doing with it? What's going to happen? What do we have to worry about? What's the level of confidence? And this rise of zero party data, which is really about consumers choosing to share data, though I believe we have to go one step further. So choosing to share data, but also having ownership over their data. So even if they share it, they still actually own it. We effectively have rights to use their data, and each time that the data is used, they should be compensated for it. So I think that's critical into understanding zero party data is they choose, they own it, and they're compensated every time it's used. So additionally, in today's environment, every piece of data that you collect is also a liability, and we need to be very purposeful of any data we collect and why, and not just collect it just because we can. So the level of responsibility, has dramatically changed. So I think that our industry plus many others are into some big changes over the next number of years. Where are we going to get to? Is a place where we have much better data and access to actually more data.
Oh, excellent. So, speaking of data and obviously measure protocols success, so you recently released a new report. You called it App Life Report, and you're highlighting some of the data measure protocols able to provide. But for the audience, can you provide a bit of an overview of what's included in the report and why would it be significant today?
Yes. So, one of the challenges of being a data company is, how do you illustrate, the data that you have, or, how do you, talk and have conversations about interesting things? So, one of our initiatives is this App Life report, which we take select windows of time and build some data sets and just share some stuff that we find interesting. So it gets published right at this point, twice a year, and we focus on a few key areas. We're very keen around engagement. So often, you'll hear a certain app has had 1 billion downloads. Well, what does that mean, or why does it matter? So we look at app engagement through the lens of actually using the app. If you have it on your phone, it doesn't really matter. We do see that about 40, people use about 40 different apps on a weekly basis. So we want to know how much time they're actually using it. Um, how many times, certain apps is the first one to be used when they pick up their phone. I think that's a strong indicator of engagement. And as well as notifications and stuff. So we're also able to look at usage across, mobile streaming services, particularly with a lot of these new ad-supported ones that are coming on board. Time spent with gaming and search trends across, not only Google but YouTube and TikTok. Some really interesting stuff that's happening there, and we usually focus a little bit on some of the mobile shopping trends, the different types of apps and services that we're using, because these are they just appear out of nowhere sometimes, and they quickly start challenging some of the big players.
Yeah, that was really interesting how you made a connection between like the app usage and the actual shopping behavior. I never really considered to see it in that way, but it actually brought a lot of light in the situation now, especially with the shopping sprees that are happening soon to be, and like now that we're doing this in the late November. But getting more into the detail of it, what would you say, like the key insights that you'd like to share from the report?
Yeah, so some of the things that we see is, there's this staple apps that tend to be the big players. Like you got the YouTubes, the Instagrams, and even still, Facebook, where they have overall popularity and usage. But we do see apps such as, TikTok. There's so much discussion around how it's quickly risen, how it's starting to meet the levels and increasing the levels of engagement across all generations. So we see some Gen Z using for about 16 hours a week. The closest is probably a YouTube, which is between 5 and 6 hours. So it's immensely starting to dominate, and it's redefining how we think engagement itself. But for some of the younger audiences, we do continually start seeing some of these messaging apps. Their world is more about messaging and connecting and communicating. So the Snapchats are definitely dominating even in the number of notifications that they get. Additionally, we see this around the realm of gaming is the gender divide, that the traditional gamer is not male 18 to 24. We see, even though there's a higher incidence of men gaming, we see the amount of time that's spent gaming is really the same across the two of them. And when it comes to things like shopping, a lot of these new apps are becoming quite popular with these younger generations, even starting to outdo like the Walmarts and competing with the Amazons and such.
Well, it was quite interesting to actually see that female gamers are really coming up, and it's coming from when I was a youngling playing locking myself in the room. It was mainly with the guys, but trying to get my female friends to kind of join in and be interested. And now see, I think Call of Duty is incredibly popular. It's
Yes.
amazing. It's I mean it's
And, well,
a game for all.
and even when we think of like streaming services, one of the key competitors for streaming service is actually gaming. If you look at where people are spending big bulks amount of time, they're either like binge watching something or they're playing some kind of game. So while the Hulus, Netflixes, and stuff are kind of battling it out, often their true competitor is when they're not streaming, they're either on Twitch or playing some kind of mobile game, or some console or PC based game.
Absolutely, and not to digress a little bit further, but it's with the Xbox Game Pass, I think, which is now essentially a live streaming service for games. It's an incredible achievement and really impressive step that Microsoft took. But going back into the insight aspect, before I get too many flashbacks of being a fun little kid, it's can you discuss the methodology that you used in creating this for our methodology fans out there with us?
The easiest way to describe it is we take a show me, don't tell me approach. So, if we were to ask you, well, what did you spend on Amazon last month? Could you actually tell me? Probably be pretty difficult. Nevertheless, what did you watch on, YouTube or something like that? So what we'll ask them, and part of our technology is this screen detection. We'll ask somebody, okay, open up your Amazon app, go to your history and scroll through it. And part of our technology will detect the content. It'll summarize it and then present to the user This is data that we've collected. Are you okay sharing it with us under these terms and for these amount? If they say yes, then we get it, and the systems in the background will aggregate and collate all this data. So we're being, there's no passive metering happening here. We're being very upfront of what we're looking for. This is how you access it, and this is what you're sharing with this. So that's one part of the technology. We can get them to do all kinds of different behavioral tasks. Share this, upload this. It's so instead of doing, somebody may get 20 cents for a 20-minute survey. We can pay up to $1.50, say, for a 2-minute task. Now, the reality is the value of the data that they're sharing is so much higher, so we're able to compensate them much better. So it's simple in concept, but extremely difficult at scale. Um, but we love trying to tackle difficult problems.
Oh. So there's yeah, there's people getting paid to scroll through TikTok, and which is impressive. It's a new career move that I haven't considered yet, but we'll see how the inflation hits. So speaking of TikTok, there's obviously you mentioned a lot of the interesting findings there. What were the main findings like about TikTok and its influence, its popularity, but really how it's impacting the generations? So you've got the Gen X, Y, and the millennial split. I noticed.
Yeah. So one wild bit is um, Gen Z are, almost about 5,400 videos that they're consuming on a monthly basis. Versus millennials, it's about 1,600. So the sheer amount of content that they're consuming is immense. Some will say that these younger generations are distracted or they don't pay attention and such. I believe it's something different. I think they're developed in such a sense that they're extremely efficient at filtering content. They can go through a lot of content and they can filter and quickly assess if something is of interest to them. So it's no surprise TikTok is kind of redefining some of the rules across all generations. They're spending Gen Z spending 16 hours a week. Gen X is only slightly more on Facebook than TikTok, but that's soon to change. And additionally, we're starting to see TikTok becoming a search destination. When we look at some of the search analysis, things like how to are at the top. And when we look at the metrics, the number of videos that they save and the searches that they do, is through the roof. The one that does stand out is when it comes to watching live. It's more of a millennials thing than it is a younger generation. So again, the search is probably I think one of the biggest things that's changing the how people use this platform.
So speaking of generations now, going more into the shopping behavior, do you see that there is a generational split in the way that people approach shopping, especially on their devices? And if so, is there any advice on, for example, that brands can use for their strategies and really get into nitty gritty and get the audience that they are really looking for?
Yeah, what we do see is some of the older generations, Gen X is more likely to be using things like some of the traditional ones, like Walmart, Target, and eBay. Amazon's just used by everybody. But when you look at the younger generations, you really start seeing, Temu kind of came out of nowhere, and it's particularly in the U.S. it's being used in immense amount. And some of the other ones